The story begins in a world where strange news is spreading everywhere. Reports talk about a giant fish, nearly 10 meters long, spotted in the ocean. Other headlines claim that trees are suddenly growing at an abnormal speed, with their roots stretching for dozens of miles underground. Even more shocking are the cracks that have appeared on the Earth's surface without any warning. No earthquakes, no tremors. Journalists everywhere are asking the same question: could this be the beginning of the end of the world? Meanwhile, in Shinwoo High School, the students don't take any of this seriously. To them, it's just more clickbait, sensational headlines designed to get views, or maybe even AI-generated nonsense that's messed everything up lately. At that very moment, the real drama on campus isn't the world ending. It's Lily breaking up with her boyfriend. Most of the students think he never deserved her in the first place. After all, she put up with him all throughout high school, only for him to end up in a third-rate academy, while she got accepted into the elite Shinshan Academy. Lily walks up to the heartbroken Fang and tells him that she's thought a lot about their relationship over the years. She's finally realized it was just a childish, meaningless crush. She's heard from many people that high school romances never last. Eventually, everyone grows up, moves on, and ends up marrying someone from their own social class. Lily goes on to say that love between people from different worlds only works in cheesy stories like Romeo and Juliet. Her speech has the whole crowd laughing at Fang, whispering to each other, wondering why he's so quiet. Is he in shock? Has he lost his mind? Some even bet he'll drop to his knees any second and beg her to stay. Just as they all pull out their phones to film him, Fang casually says, "Sure, no problem." Lily freezes, stunned. It takes her a few seconds to process whether this is real or just a dream. But when she sees him walking away and asking if she needs anything else, she realizes she can't just let this go. She calls out his name. Fang turns around, confused, and asks what she wants. Lily panics, struggling to save face in front of everyone. She insists that she knows he's up to something, but no matter what his plan is, she's never going back to him. At that point, Fang loses patience. He tells her flat out that he doesn't have time for her nonsense. He knows she's obsessed with herself because everyone calls her the prettiest girl in school, and that explains her attitude. He ends it by saying that even if he sees her again, he won't bother saying hi, and it'd be best if she just left him alone. He's far too busy for drama. They whisper among themselves, wondering how he could be so cold to the most beautiful girl in school. But deep down, Fang knows the truth. Lily and the rest of the students are just clueless. They don't realize the world is about to change forever. Right now, money, power, status, and even education might seem important, but very soon, none of it will matter. Why does Fang know that? Because he's come back from the future. And from his perspective, all these classmates of his are just acquaintances. Nothing more. Fang wasn't interested in helping anyone but himself and the few people he truly cared about. That's why he didn't care about school gossip, reputation, or fitting in. His focus had to shift entirely because something much bigger was coming. A disaster was already on its way to their planet, and worst of all, it had already begun a day ago. But no one had noticed yet. Even though reporters and news channels tried to sound the alarm, most people brushed it off. They thought every video was just AI-generated nonsense meant to stir panic. Then suddenly, a strange message appeared in front of Fang. Aura restoration in progress. Estimated time, 1 year. Once the aura was fully restored, the entire planet would begin to shift. The world of jobs, social positions, and status symbols would mean nothing. The only profession that would matter, once again, was that of a hunter. It was the first time Fang had ever heard the voice of the system. "And how the hell are you talking to me?" But instead of answering, the system emitted a blinding light. It didn't hurt him, it just wanted to deliver a message. In that message, the system introduced itself as the Cosmic System, responsible for automatically generating combat technologies and resources. Currently, the number of available techniques was 0. Curious, Fang tried to interact with the screen, thinking maybe he could increase the number, but his hand passed right through it, making him look like a fool. Suddenly, the massive head of a monster, something like Godzilla, emerged from the system and lunged at him. Fang instinctively raised his arm to block, thinking the system had turned against him. But seconds later, the system assured him it meant no harm. It explained that the vision was just a memory, one from a long-forgotten past, a reminder of the creature that wiped out him and billions of others without a second thought. Fragments of Fang's previous life came rushing back. A sharp pain hit his chest as he remembered what had happened. Back then, he was just an ordinary person, maybe even less than ordinary, just trying to survive after the world had changed. He'd lived like a rat, hiding wherever he could, hoping the catastrophe would somehow blow over. But eventually, monstrous creatures began appearing and slaughtering humans without mercy. And because he was weak, slow, and completely unprepared, it was only a matter of time before they caught him. The first strike that hit his fragile body was enough to leave him barely clinging to life. In those final moments, only one thought consumed his mind. If only I had a chance to get revenge. Fang believed now that it was that burning desire for revenge that pulled him back from death. The system must have chosen him because it sensed something different in him, something fierce and real. When it scanned his broken body and soul, it knew this was someone who truly wanted to fight back, not just cry about the end of the world. Fueled by that thought, Fang reached his hand into the system screen once more and activated it. From that moment on, he vowed to use every piece of knowledge from his past life to become the strongest. The system finally kicked in, responding with a casual, "Hold on, bro. Just tuning your settings." Fang already knew he was moments away from gaining his new power, so he replied with a smirk, "Take your time, champ." But the system, ever efficient, completed the synchronization in seconds and informed him that he could now test his power if he was ready. The system explained that Fang could use anything in the universe as material to boost his strength. His main objective? To acquire the most powerful techniques and save the world. Everything happening now felt eerily familiar. Just like before, the government wasn't telling people what to do, they were just telling them to prepare for disaster. That subtle shift was finally enough to make citizens take things seriously. After all, people in this country trusted their government blindly. The reason for the government's vague announcements was simple: they didn't want panic. In nearby countries, chaos was already erupting. Criminals there had started destroying everything in sight, convinced that if the world was ending anyway, there were no rules left to follow. Fang remembered what the system had told him. He could use anything to grow stronger. That made him wonder, should I head straight into the heart of the disasters? Just then, he noticed a message from Shinshan University Lily's Academy. They were telling students to wear sunscreen because ultraviolet radiation had spiked to dangerous levels. Some students mocked the warning, laughing at the so-called crazy university protocols and claiming no one actually dies from sunlight. But unlike them, Fang believed the warning. What confused him was how the weather at the university could be so extreme while things were still normal where he was. After all, Shinshan was just 15 minutes away by car. Curious, Fang joined the university's student group chat. He saw messages from teachers urging students to avoid a specific gate on campus. That was all the confirmation he needed. He smiled. That kind of message could only mean one thing: something supernatural was happening there. Something tied to the aura phenomenon the system had told him about. Fang felt a surge of excitement. His first real chance to grow stronger had just landed right in front of him. Sometime later, we see students shielding themselves with umbrellas, trying to survive the intense heat. They were all saying the gate they were exiting from was hot, but still better than the others. Meanwhile, Fang finally arrived at the university. He too could feel the suffocating heat, but he wasn't upset. He was thrilled. This heat confirmed what he had been waiting for. The disaster was happening right here. As the students kept running, Fang suddenly noticed strange glowing droplets falling from the sky. He crouched down to examine one. He'd heard of snow, but this? Maybe it was a sign, another symptom of the world's unraveling. When he touched one of the drops, it lit up instantly. Fang flinched and backed away. "Is this thing gonna explode or what?" he muttered. But the system reappeared, calmly announcing, "Detected, fluctuating yang energy within the droplet. Analysis complete. You may now acquire a yang-type ability model." The activation process, however, was anything but smooth. As soon as the energy entered his body, Fang doubled over in pain. His entire form twisted as if it couldn't handle the power surging through it. Waves of heat burst from his skin, and with the temperature already this high, it was starting to feel like he'd burst into flames at any moment. Everyone around Fang was silently cursing him. The heat was unbearable already, and now there was this extra wave of burning energy making their lives even worse. While Fang was still reeling from the pain, he overheard someone scoff nearby, saying something like, "Dude looks like a Super Saiyan." Unfortunately, Fang couldn't even respond. The pain was so overwhelming, it felt like he was about to die. Then, at last, the long-awaited message arrived. "Process complete. New Yang-type skill acquired, Golden Sun Breathing. Meanwhile, back inside the academy, today marked the official first day of the new school term. The fresh students were still checking in, registering their names and getting their dorm assignments. All eyes, of course, were locked on Lily. Her beauty was so dazzling, it practically turned heads by default. Several guys offered to help carry her luggage to her room, but Lily turned them all down immediately. Her natural charisma kicked in as she reminded them. She still held the title of Heartbreaker. As she scanned the area, her gaze landed on two people who knew each other from high school. She quietly judged them, thinking it was just another case of teenage puppy love. Suddenly, a thunderous explosion rocked the entire campus. Everyone froze. Over the academy's loudspeakers, the faculty announced that the explosion had originated from the northern gate. All students were to stay away from that area immediately. Lily, of course, wasn't having it. She thought to herself, I need to know what's really going on. If we shift over to the northern gate now, we'll find the source of the explosion, none other than our boy, Fang. Turns out, the blast had been caused by the energy surge released from his newly acquired skill. This skill, Golden Sun Breathing, was one of the foundational breathing techniques used in martial arts. It was typically practiced during meditation to rapidly enhance one's power. The system explained that the skill didn't require any formal training. After all, it was just a breathing technique. This wasn't the place, and he didn't have the luxury to sit and analyze things. The sun above him was blazing with intense energy, and the stronger it shone, the more effective his training would be beneath it. Without wasting another second, Fang sat down and began meditating, activating his new breathing technique. Back inside the academy, students suddenly started commenting on how the lights seemed to dim slightly. One of them mentioned that the temperature felt cooler, but their conversation was cut short by the sound of someone stomping the ground with immense force. That someone was the academy director himself. Furious, he barked at the students for heading toward the northern gate despite the warnings. He immediately ordered security to use force if necessary to keep them back. One of the director's unknown subordinates stepped forward and suggested making the northern gate officially restricted. Strangely enough, the director agreed without hesitation. Clearly, this man held some serious authority. Back at the scene of the explosion, the system popped up once again and informed Fang, "You have successfully purified a Grade A contaminated zone, and that zone is the northern gate." Contaminated zones, as it turned out, were the disaster areas where dark aura energy was being generated. But Fang was hit with a surprising twist. According to the system, these zones were designated by the government of a place called the Shio State. His thoughts were cut short by a loud mechanical voice echoing through the air. "Alert! Unauthorized individual has entered the northern gate." Fang turned toward the sound and spotted a group of uniformed figures approaching, soldier-like, armored, and clearly on high alert. He wondered if they were actual military or something else entirely. One of the masked figures started heading directly toward him. Fang immediately snapped out of his thoughts and took off running. If he got caught, he'd definitely be in trouble, and losing his freedom of movement this early would ruin everything. Luckily for him, the thick cloud of smoke and dust in the area helped conceal him. When the figure reached the spot where Fang had used his sun-breathing technique, he crouched down and began inspecting the remnants. From the energy traces, he could tell that someone had been here, a human. That realization stunned him. Could a human really have resolved this entire crisis alone? It didn't make sense. The whole aura phenomenon was still new to humanity, and most ability users were secretly aligned with the government anyway. Someone acting solo was unheard of. Lily, who overheard part of the conversation from nearby, raised an eyebrow. She could have sworn the person she saw running earlier had the same build and back as Fang. After a moment of silence, she smiled to herself and shook her head. No way. That loser Fang would never even step foot near Shinshan Academy, let alone cause an explosion. Time passed and Fang finally made it back home to rest. We see him lying down with cold compresses all over his body, trying to reduce his body temperature, but it wasn't working at all. Not even an ice-cold shower or cranking the AC to its lowest setting helped. At this rate, he figured he'd have to get used to being called the hot guy from now on. While lying there, Fang had a sudden realization. What if that explosion attracted unwanted attention? He grabbed his phone and checked the news. Trending everywhere was talk about something called the Aura Development Organization. Fang raised an eyebrow. First time I've seen them in the news. People used to treat it like a joke. With a name like that, no one ever took them seriously. His thoughts drifted back to the soldiers and the mysterious figure from earlier. Could they have been from this organization? The trending post everyone was sharing showed a chart explaining the combat power levels within martial arts cultivation. Level 1, the warrior can craft spiritual weapons. Level 2, they can manipulate spiritual aura internally. Level 3, they can envelop their entire body with aura. Level 4, power reaches a level comparable to kings and emperors. Level 5, the warrior may even be capable of dimensional travel. Highest level, unknown, its abilities are beyond comprehension. Fang nodded slowly. It made sense. The organization's goal in releasing this power chart was to protect fighters, to help them understand what level they were at, and to stop them from trying to take on catastrophes far beyond their capabilities. Fang also started to suspect that the organization might be working with the government behind the scenes to help raise awareness among hunters. After all, the government couldn't afford to lose too many hunters before the true scope of the disaster became clear. There were probably plenty of new hunters out there just like him. Some might have unlocked powers they were hiding, while others could already be using their abilities for selfish or evil purposes, completely unaware that others like them even existed. To measure his current strength level, he decided to follow the tier chart from the organization. Starting with level 1, he tried channeling his aura to forge a spiritual weapon and created a powerful axe. Even though he'd only awakened his aura a few days ago, his control over it was shockingly precise. And when he actually succeeded in crafting the weapon, even he couldn't believe it. His shock only grew when the system popped up with a message: "Congratulations, you've reached level 1. Since you achieved this on your own, you've been awarded 50 additional fusion points." He asked the system what he could actually do with them. The system explained that fusion points could be used to convert any type of energy he possessed into an external object or tool. Fang's eyes landed on a glass sitting nearby. Curious, he tried channeling his sun aura into it using some of the points. Immediately, a system prompt appeared: "Confirm, infuse this object with sun aura." Thanks to sheer protagonist luck and the power of absurd writing, Fang suddenly remembered he had an old sword lying around at home that he never really used. Apparently, the author forgot he was writing a Chinese story and added a classic Japanese weapon for no reason. Either way, Fang decided to infuse the small sword with sun aura as a test. If it worked well, he'd go buy a real sword next time and start going full savage. Later that same night, right outside Fang's apartment, we witnessed the official appearance of the first monster. And naturally, since this isn't Japan, we're skipping the gelatinous slimes and starting off strong with a rabbit. Meanwhile, Fang had finally managed to fall asleep after lowering his body temperature through hours of intense training. But just as he was starting to rest, he suddenly sensed something approaching his home. He groaned and muttered, "So much for peace." While preparing to get up, Fang used his aura to scan the surroundings. He wondered if it was just some random pet. After all, hearing animal noises was perfectly normal in the neighborhood, especially now that he was a level 1 warrior with enhanced senses. But as he focused more on the source of the sound, a small wave of anxiety crept in. Something felt off. The creature wasn't coming from a neighbor's house, it was closer, much closer. Fang got up and opened his door, grumbling to himself, which idiot left their dog out in the hallway. Then came the real shock. Standing in the middle of the corridor was a rabbit. And honestly, that thing looked like it belonged in a horror movie. Fear began to take over Fang as he stared at the creature in front of him. That was no ordinary rabbit. It was an evolved beast. And what terrified him the most was that in his past life, he had never once faced a monster head-on. He always ran. While he was frozen, haunted by those bitter memories, a helicopter hovered above his apartment. Inside the chopper, a woman, clearly the same mysterious figure from earlier, was on a call, checking in with the team. She asked if they'd located the rabbit that had consumed the night fruit and evolved. Her tone was sharp. She told them to take their jobs seriously and report every update immediately. The moment she finished speaking, she jumped off the rooftop she'd been standing on just seconds ago. As she leapt through the air, she muttered that she had just sensed the aura of a newly evolved monster, and she had to check it out in person. Mid-descent, she noticed the aura's intensity weakening. She immediately slowed her fall and reported to the helicopter that the energy was coming from a densely populated area, roughly 20 kilometers away. While heading there, she also sent out a group message warning her teammates not to engage recklessly. The beast's energy was unstable, and it was still evolving. Her acrobatic rooftop movements didn't go unnoticed. A man sitting on his balcony, sipping late-night coffee like any tired manhwa editor, watched her with wide eyes. He muttered to his bald friend, "Man, I think I'm starting to hallucinate from all-nighters." But Baldy snapped back, "Shut up and finish recapping the story already." Back to our mysterious woman. She now said she had locked onto the monster's exact location. She was sure it was on the 65th floor of a nearby building. And now, finally, we return to our protagonist, who is still standing in front of the beast. Time seemed frozen around him. The monster hadn't attacked yet, but Fang could feel it coming. Thankfully, he snapped back to focus just in time. He activated his aura and in a flash used his new speed to predict the rabbit's attack pattern. Fang noticed how different his body felt after reaching level 1. It was like everything was in slow motion. He could see the rabbit's every movement in real time. Even more surprising, his muscles responded instantly to his commands, despite how new the power still was to him. But while his body was adapting fast, his mind was racing. None of this matched what he remembered from his previous life. This wasn't supposed to be the time when evolved monsters showed up. The only advantage he had was that he remembered the names, appearances, and abilities of most creatures from the past. And this rabbit, it hadn't reached its final form yet. If it evolved any further, it would start devouring everyone in the building. Fang knew he had to stop it now, especially since the rabbit had consumed the night fruit, which meant its power would multiply in the dark. At night, its evolution rate was much faster than it would be during the day. Using his superior strength, Fang grabbed the rabbit by the tail. He knew from memory that this was one of its weak points. With a determined shout, he yanked the beast and swung it violently. With zero hesitation, he hurled the rabbit out the window, yelling, "Let's see if you can fly, furball." Then Fang, being Fang, followed it. He channeled his aura into his legs and launched himself through the air, shouting mid-jump, "Hold still. I need a cool shot of this for my highlight reel." Fang focused his aura into his fists, trying to quickly come up with a cool name for the attack he was about to unleash. But unfortunately, he didn't have time. He struck the beast with a powerful punch straight to the gut. No flashy name, no epic pose, just pure instinct. He still wasn't skilled enough to control his ki properly. The blow, charged with sun aura, tore through the rabbit's chest. And for a moment, the beast looked genuinely sad. It didn't want to die. Not before completing its evolution. Not before becoming a big, strong rabbit, just like its father. Clinging to life, the rabbit made one final desperate move. It tried to absorb Fang's sun aura, hoping it could fuel its growth. But Fang remained calm. He muttered, "That is going to kill you." And just as expected, sun aura was far too powerful for the creature's body. The rabbit swelled violently, then exploded mid-air like a firecracker. One of the neighbors peeked out from his window, confused. "Thunder? But there's no rain." The man lived on a high floor, so he couldn't see much past the trees. Certainly not Fang, who stood calmly on the ground below. "That beast really was an idiot," Fang muttered, brushing off his shirt. But he wasn't bragging. This wasn't arrogance. There was a reason he'd said that. Sun aura was the natural counter to the rabbit's moon aura. Trying to absorb a directly opposing energy type was suicidal. Fang figured the rabbit must have been so hungry, still in mid-evolution, that it had taken the risk out of desperation. His thoughts then shifted to the bigger picture. Monsters were showing up way earlier than they had in his past life. If he hadn't already become a registered warrior, he'd probably be dead again by now. And since these low-level creatures were arriving early, that meant stronger monsters would follow soon. If he didn't raise his rank fast enough, he'd die again. Let's leave Fang for a moment and check in with the mystery woman. She suddenly stopped in her tracks. In a voice filled with disbelief, she said, "The aura, it disappeared?" That had never happened before. She rushed toward the last known energy trace. Her mind was spinning. When she arrived, she confirmed it. The beast was dead, completely dead. She contacted her team immediately and reported what she had found. Then, she began extracting the remaining traces of moon aura left in the area. What shocked her even more was the presence of another aura mixed in. She couldn't identify it at first, but when she touched one of the shards, it burned her skin slightly. Her eyes widened. It's some kind of light-based aura. What really threw her off, though, was the purity of the energy. The sharp, concentrated power was familiar. It matched the exact same aura she had analyzed near the northern gate of Shinshan Academy. Realizing how serious this was, she didn't just talk to her team. She escalated the call straight to High Command. She informed them that the beast had been slain, but not by her. Whoever did this was a new hunter possessing a high-grade aura. Her commander narrowed his eyes and asked, "Are you saying this is the same individual responsible for purifying the Northern Gate? The one who triggered that unusual aura explosion?" He began compiling a profile. Unidentified hunter, level 1, single star ranking. And if that much power was truly coming from someone that low ranked, they had to find him and recruit him into the organization immediately. The woman finished gathering the remaining aura fragments from the ground. She confirmed the commander's suspicion. Yes, whoever this person is, he's strong. Very strong. The commander ordered her to temporarily suspend all other missions and focus solely on tracking Fang. Finding him, tracing his energy trail was now the organization's top priority. He also granted her full authorization to recruit Fang into the Aura Development Organization the moment she made contact. He told her clearly, "Get him on our side, by any means necessary, but only after confirming his power." She nodded, replying that she'd begin the assignment immediately. But there was one small thing she needed to take care of first. A tiny detour. She wanted to stop by the nearest cafe for a glass of milk. A world-changing hunt for a mysterious powerhouse, and she needed milk first. While walking, her thoughts were spinning. Who is this Fang guy? And how have I never heard of him before? If he was strong enough to defeat a high-level beast at such a low rank, then he might be one of those martial arts prodigies, someone who had been training since childhood. And when Aura finally entered their planet, it awakened his potential, giving him strength far beyond anyone at his level. We cut back to Fang, who had just woken up, feeling unusually cheerful. With a huge grin, he stretched and muttered, "What a perfect way to start the day, boys." He was in an oddly good mood. So good, in fact, that he thought maybe he should start waking up early every day from now on. The reason? He now possessed the sun aura, and under sunlight, it developed rapidly. If he wanted to grow stronger as quickly as possible, there was no better time to train, especially now that the monsters had started appearing way earlier than expected. As he began refining his skills through sun breathing, he suddenly felt the presence of his spiritual axe, the weapon he'd forged earlier. But something was off. The flow of ki around him was surging, pouring toward the axe for some unknown reason. All of Fang's focus shifted. What's happening right now? Does this mean I'm about to level up again? He didn't understand how it was possible to grow this fast. But honestly, he wasn't complaining. If he could evolve this quickly, then why not? With that thought in mind, Fang began swinging the axe side to side in smooth, repeated motions. He noticed something almost immediately. The axe felt lighter. Way lighter than it did yesterday. While spinning it around, he muttered that he could probably get used to the weight even faster if he increased the number of swings. He compared it to chopping wood in the normal world. Yeah, lumberjacks get faster over time too. And if they're getting faster, it means they're getting stronger. Same logic applies here. Fang finally reached a moment of clarity, a true flash of enlightenment, triggered by his zigzagging thoughts and relentless axe swings. Right then, the system spoke up. "You've advanced to 2-star rank within level 1. Fang could feel it too. His body was becoming tougher, his physical durability increasing gradually. He figured his rapid growth must be due to the unused energy that had been lying dormant in his body. Back when he first broke through and reached 1-star rank, he wasn't able to absorb all of the aura flowing through him. Some of that energy had remained trapped inside him, waiting for a chance to awaken. Now it finally had. But the real problem? His training was loud. Too loud. Fang realized that if he kept swinging weapons like this in public, someone would definitely call the authorities, or worse, the neighbors. So he made a decision. He needed to find a secluded place before his progress got him into serious trouble. Meanwhile, at the headquarters of the Aura Development Organization, we finally got a look at the commander's face. For the first time. Just then, he received an urgent message on his device. The content? A new sun aura signal has been detected. The commander raised an eyebrow. Could it be the same person who defeated the evolved beast? He didn't say anything out loud, but the look on his face said it all. This wasn't just a coincidence. Sometime later, we saw Fang again, now in a more isolated area. He was in the middle of trying out the fusion technique on a newly acquired weapon. Apparently, Fang had ordered a sword online a few days earlier. Why? Because he didn't want to waste any more of his fusion points. Last time when he tried fusing Sun Aura with a small dagger, the process worked, but the weapon melted instantly. This time, however, things were different. The new sword seemed to handle the aura just fine, and the system even confirmed it. Weapon compatibility excellent. Aura match confirmed. The moment the fusion process completed, Fang practically lost his mind from excitement. He couldn't wait to test the sword out. He had to swing it immediately. But, of course, Fang being Fang, he started flailing the sword around like a maniac. Each wild movement charged the blade with more and more sun aura, until the energy inside started building up too fast. If he didn't act quickly, that sword was going to explode in his face. Fang panicked. The energy inside the sword was building up way too fast, and the blade was getting heavier by the second. He clenched his jaw and started swinging the sword with everything he had, even though the sheer amount of aura stored inside it made moving it incredibly difficult. Luckily, he spotted a body of water nearby. Without wasting a second, he turned toward it and released all the energy in one blast, aiming it straight at the lake. Boom! A massive explosion tore through the water, sending waves in every direction. Fang stared at the steam rising from the blast and let out a sigh of relief. That could have blown up the whole mountain like an idiot, he muttered. He didn't stick around. The sound alone was more than enough to attract attention, especially from other hunters. So naturally, he vanished from the area. Moments later, just as expected, the mysterious woman arrived at the mountain. She was out of breath, frustrated, mumbling to herself, "I can't believe I missed him again." But then she noticed something strange. The lake had changed. It was now a steaming hot spring. She froze in place, speechless. Even worse, there had been a statue she left at the top of that mountain, and now it was gone. She looked around and muttered, "What the hell am I supposed to do now?" Things hadn't been the same for her ever since this son or user appeared. Her life had become chaos, and before she even thought about recruiting him into the organization, she was seriously planning to beat him half to death first. But then, a sudden surge of energy hit her senses. She turned toward it. Her eyes widened. The sun aura had advanced. It was now at 2-star rank, even though it had been just 1 star yesterday. Her shock grew even more when she sensed traces of a spiritual weapon. That was a huge deal. Spiritual weapons were terrifying. Even if held by someone without aura, they could be strong enough to take down actual hunters. The mysterious woman, who still hadn't been named by the author and might need a name soon, stood there stunned. She whispered to herself, "There are only 2 spiritual weapons in the entire organization, and both had been created using unstable technology that only their group had access to." Her mind felt like it was melting from overthinking. Finally, she gave up, sat down with a bottle of milk, and took a long sip. "I must be overthinking it. This is probably just the aura of a regular hunter, not a spiritual weapon." We'll leave her sulking for now and switch back to Fang, who was deep in thought. He wondered, can I fuse more than one type of aura into the same weapon? After all, the system had told him earlier that he could acquire multiple aura types and bind any of them to any weapon, but it never said whether a single weapon could hold multiple auras at once. Fang's train of thought was suddenly interrupted by a new message. It was from someone asking if he happened to be one of the early awakened hunters too. The stranger went on to explain that they had checked Fang's public profile and noticed that he'd been browsing content related to hunters. So naturally, they wanted to reach out to see if Fang would be interested in meeting others like him. Fang replied that he was still new to the whole thing and honestly didn't understand much yet, but the stranger reassured him, "No worries. Even the strongest government-registered hunters are still at level 1. That means you're not that far behind." Fang blinked. "Wait, does that mean I'm already on the same level as those guys?" Before he could overthink it, another message came through. The stranger said a new contaminated zone had just appeared and asked Fang if he'd like to tag along and help scout it. That way, the risk would be lower if they went in as a group. The moment Fang saw the location info pop up, he opened the message without hesitation. The contaminated zone was called the Black River and the Dragon's Volcano. Just the name alone screamed danger. And according to the details, the place was anything but safe, with extremely high temperatures that were far from normal. But Fang's reaction? He was thrilled. If the heat is that intense, then I can definitely use it to boost my sun aura. Meanwhile, we cut to the mountainous region known as Binmaku. There, several voices echoed across the rocky cliffs. A group of hunters talking to the same mysterious person who had messaged Fang. And it turns out, that person wasn't a guy at all. She was a girl. The other hunters asked her, "So where's this Fang guy you've been talking about?" She casually told them he was on his way. No need to rush. They dropped the subject and started treating her with much more respect. One of them even thanked her directly, saying that without her efforts, they wouldn't have had maps or reliable data about the area. At last, we got her name, Xiao, a talent scout for the Aura Development Organization. Her job? track down gifted hunters, and recruit them into the ranks of the organization. The sad part for Xiao was that all the hunters around her had weak auras. None of them were good enough to be recommended to the organization, which, by the way, operated directly under the authority of the Xia state itself. Even Xiao had to pay a hefty bribe just to join the organization in the first place. Her family pulled strings and spent a fortune to get her in. But her real problem now, she hadn't discovered a single talented hunter in ages. And if that continued, the organization was going to chew her out hard. Just as she began spiraling in despair, Fang arrived, with his smug face and his overpowered sword glowing behind him like he was on the cover of a novel. One glance was all Xiao needed. She immediately recognized his rank, 2-star level 1. But more than that, his aura felt warm, strong, but not oppressive. It radiated power without aggression. She snapped out of her thoughts quickly and stepped forward. It was time to open the entrance, the gateway into the volcanic cave. As soon as the group stepped inside, Fang volunteered to take the lead, confident as always. But he turned back and asked, "Hey, Xiao, mind lighting the way for me? Kinda hard to see." Behind them, a long-haired hunter named Gerges turned to the guy in the back, Mosin, and said, "Honestly, the heat's not as bad as they made it sound." That's when Gerdura, the short-haired hunter, jumped in. He explained that the heat would spike the closer they got to the core of the contamination. Listening to their casual banter and how kindly they treated him, Fang thought to himself, they seem like decent people. Even though this is my first time meeting them, they're treating me like one of their own. But those thoughts vanished quickly because the tunnel opened up. They had exited the narrow passage and entered the volcanic zone. And yes, the temperature was brutal now. The moment Fang saw the volcano, he took off running, straight toward it. His teammates shouted after him, completely confused. What is he doing? Their voices grew louder when they saw him leap and throw himself into the volcano. They rushed to the edge, yelling his name, trying to see if they could pull him out, but the heat was too intense. They couldn't even get close. Seconds later, a minor volcanic explosion erupted, forcing Fang's teammates to leap backward in panic. At that exact moment, the system alerted Fang, "You are on the verge of unlocking the technique, Flame Blade." To use the technique at full power, it needed to be fused with a strong weapon. And once the fusion was complete, not only would he be able to unleash flame energy, but he'd also gain access to the power of thunder. If trained further, this technique could eventually be combined with sword intent once its wielder reached that level of mastery. Just the idea of it made Fang's heart race, even though he knew it would take him ages to get there. But for now, it was time to test it out. Without hesitation, Fang asked the system to fuse the new technique with his sword. Once the fusion began, he emerged from the heart of the volcano, and the others stared in disbelief. He was absorbing the magma's raw energy straight into his body. The system spoke again, "Fusion complete." Fang stood frozen for a second, not because he was scared, but because he genuinely couldn't believe this had actually worked. Meanwhile, his teammates noticed that the chaotic aura inside the cave had settled. Thanks to Fang, one of them suggested they train inside the cave to make use of the high concentration of spiritual energy. Gerges, clearly fired up, shouted that he could feel the energy flooding into his body at insane speed. Right beside him, Gerdura turned to Zhao and asked if she wanted to join them in refining their skills. Zhao declined, calmly replying that she'd rather just observe for now. And so, while everyone began their training, Zhao kept her eyes on the surroundings. Time passed, and soon, a new group of figures emerged from the distance. From the moment she laid eyes on them, Xiao could tell they were hunters too. As they got closer, she could sense it clearly. They were one-star hunters, just like her group. Their leader, a tall man named Fajla, stepped forward and asked firmly, "What are you and your companions doing inside our territory?" Xiao knew she didn't stand a chance against them on her own. So instead of trying to fight, she chose the safest route, kindness. She lowered her head politely and apologized, explaining that her team had discovered the cave first, but she'd be willing to let them stay and refine their skills alongside them if they wanted to. But Fajla just laughed mockingly. He looked down on her, calling her a zero-star weakling, and told her that if she didn't want to get smashed into the ground, she'd better take her friends and leave immediately. Inside, Xiao wasn't surprised. She knew all too well that this world ran by the law of the jungle, and everything was settled with brute force. She understood Fajla's mindset, but deep down, she hated that things had to be this way. She thought to herself, someone needs to change this. Someone has to stop the bullying among hunters. That's when Fong stepped in. He calmly walked toward Fajla, getting dangerously close, and spoke with an easygoing smile. Ain't it a bit pathetic to flex your muscles just to bully a girl? No more words needed. He activated his sword aura and gently tapped his blade against the ground, not to attack, but to test his new power and to send a warning. The effect was instant. Fajla's smirk vanished. His eyes widened in alarm as he felt the massive energy building. He shouted for his squad to back away, right as the sword aura around Fong erupted in a fiery shockwave. Back in the background, Fong's teammates, who were still meditating, were suddenly snapped back to reality. Why? Because the entire cave began to shake violently. Not because of spiritual energy flow, but because Fong's aura was shaking the earth itself. Fong stood still, watching the frightened group in front of him. He remembered all the violence and crimes that had happened in his past life, all because of this so-called law of the jungle, and he swore he'd never be part of that again. This time he had one simple goal: scare the bullies away. No need to hurt them, just show them enough power to make them run on their own, and that's exactly what he was about to do next. Our protagonist's aura, once activated, instantly makes Fajla realize just how dangerous he really is. He mutters to himself that there's no way he could ever defeat someone ranked at the 2-star level. Aware that his life is in serious danger, Fajla immediately orders his men to retreat. Meanwhile, the protagonist stays calm and collected, relieved that he managed to end the confrontation without any bloodshed. Right after that, his teammates rush over, wide-eyed and excited, still buzzing from what just happened. They ask him how he pulled off that insane sword move. The ever-humble protagonist just shrugs it off, saying he got a little angry. He really doesn't like bullies. Then he casually asks if they're done with their training. They all nod in agreement, and Xiao backs them up, explaining that the spiritual energy in the area has completely faded, so there's no point in staying any longer. As they're leaving, Xiao reflects on the earlier moment. She realizes that if that final attack had actually hit the bullies, there wouldn't have been anything left of them, just bones. That's when it really hits her. The protagonist isn't just a regular hunter. He's one of the true masters of martial arts, and in her mind, there's no doubt now, she has to report this to the organization and get him recruited. Sometime later, Gao contacts the secretary of the Aura Development Organization. The secretary is stunned by what she hears and exclaims that this means they've just discovered 2 high-level hunters in a row. Confused, Gao asks what she means. She only submitted information about one person. The secretary quickly backtracks, saying it's classified information, then smoothly changes the subject and confirms that all of Zhao's data has been logged. With a bright smile, the secretary turns to her superior and says they're incredibly lucky. Finding 2 top-tier hunters so close together, that almost never happens. The leader replies that Xiao is only cheerful because her responsibilities are still light. Unlike her, he feels the weight of pressure every day. After all, he's the one who has to deal directly with those powerful hunters. Meanwhile, in another part of the city, we see our protagonist walking around in a weird disguise. It's a makeshift costume designed to keep people from realizing that the sword he's carrying is the real deal. Ironically, the character he's dressed as seems to be someone important, but honestly, he has no idea who it's even supposed to be. Everyone around him just assumes he's doing cosplay. The trending news, however, is driving him crazy. The headlines are filled with exaggerated reports about him. People are saying that reality has merged with fantasy, that superheroes have started showing up in real life. Someone even claimed to have seen a flying dragon with their own eyes. According to the news, the one who defeated it was a sword-wielding martial arts master. Our protagonist mutters to himself that he really must have been an idiot to cause those volcanic explosions, especially now that the media is buzzing about it. After all, the volcano had been dormant for over 1,000 years, and suddenly there's talk of it erupting again. Trying to shake off the noise, he decides to focus on what really matters. Thanks to the spiritual energy he absorbed inside that cavern, his power has increased dramatically. He can feel it. He's on the verge of breaking through to the next level. That's why he wastes no time and immediately heads for the mountains. Now let's shift back to the mysterious girl, whose name we finally learn is Yan. We see her standing on a cliff, proudly saying that she's finally managed to erase all traces that our protagonist left behind in the mountains. But just then, a bright light suddenly flashes behind her. She quickly turns around and sees that someone is once again unleashing spiritual energy up on the mountain, and her day instantly gets worse. Still, she doesn't have the luxury of worrying about cleaning up after our protagonist right now. What's happening is far more important because he's not just leveling up to 3-star rank. No, the aura he's releasing is way too powerful for that. Yen decides to stop overthinking and go see what's actually happening for herself. She tells herself there's no way this could be the same person with the sun aura just 2 days ago. He was literally at the 1-star rank. Meanwhile, back with our protagonist, we see that he's reached an incredibly advanced stage in his breathing technique. The arms of the Sun King have started to emerge clearly from his body, and he quietly says to himself that the time for his breakthrough has finally come. He channels all the energy from those radiant arms and gradually directs it upward in a steady, controlled flow. Turns out, he's doing this to feed the spiritual axe and enhance its power even further. As Yin gets closer, she notices that our protagonist is trying to move the spiritual axe remotely without even touching it. Her jaw drops. How could a regular hunter do something like that? Unless, could he actually be one of those martial arts legends, the kind whose real age goes well over 100 years? Yen herself is considered one of the physically strongest hunters in the entire organization, and yet even she failed when trying to break into the 3-star tier. She ended up bedridden for a week. The closer she gets, the more stunned she becomes. The axe is visibly growing in size, and she's certain now it has been refined over 1,000 consecutive times at least. That kind of forging process is no joke. What shocks her even more is how calm and focused the hunter is. Unlike the usual reckless types, this one is transferring his ki into the weapon with extreme precision, completely unbothered by how long the breakthrough might take. And then her brain nearly short-circuits, because after just a few more moments, the axe actually starts to move. She freezes, whispering to herself that she's never witnessed anything like this, not once since the emergence of hunters. Fang's body begins to shift strangely, his aura radiating in every direction like a raging storm. A moment later, the system informs him he's officially reached the 3-star tier. The sheer pressure from his aura delays Yan's arrival by just a few seconds, but when she finally gets there, her face falls. There's no one around. The spot is empty. Her heart sinks. She's almost certain she arrived less than 30 seconds late, but she understands. Someone like him probably sensed her approaching and vanished immediately. Just as her thoughts trail off, Yen suddenly feels a chilling killing intent nearby. She doesn't run. Instead, she calmly calls out, respectfully addressing him as senior, and asks if he's still there. Sure enough, Fang is standing silently atop a high tree branch, clearly annoyed. Yen just won't leave him alone. Trying not to escalate things, Yen formally introduces herself. She tells him she's the captain of the Yang Squad, a unit under the Aura Development Organization which operates directly under the government of the Xia Nation. She continues, explaining that the organization wants to recruit him, and that's why she's been tracking him for days. She promises that if he joins, he'll be treated with the utmost respect and rewarded with more money than he could ever imagine. After finishing her pitch, Yen quietly reflects on what she just said, worried she might have upset him somehow. Fang's response is short and blunt. He asks her, "Why do they even want me to join?" Caught off guard, Yen hesitates. She doesn't want to lie, especially not to someone like him. Eventually, she tells him the truth. Their country is trying to bring order to the world of hunters. Rogue hunters are increasing in number, and the government wants to distinguish the good from the dangerous. But of course, our protagonist, being the confident guy he is, flexes his aura and simply asks, "And what if I say no? What are you gonna do then?" He's not interested in joining an organization that might end up restricting his freedom. Yen assumes Fang is just being cautious because he still doesn't trust her identity, so she decides to open up a bit more. She tells him her full name, Yen, the same Yen who used to be a famous athlete not long ago. Fang pauses for a moment, and yeah, he remembers her. He's seen her face on TV before. It actually makes sense. Athletes were likely among the first to awaken their powers due to their physical conditioning. But there's something else weighing on his mind, something much deeper. You see, our protagonist is someone who's returned from the future, and from what he remembers, joining the Aura Development Organization would only slow down his progress. That's the only reason he's hesitant. On top of that, Fang clearly remembers that the Xia Nation was completely destroyed in the future, which means at some point he will have to help the government fight back against the monster invasion, just not yet. The time isn't right. Fang breaks out of his thoughts and tells Yen that yes, he does remember her. She lights up with joy, but then he adds that he needs some time to think, and when he makes up his mind about joining, he'll let her know. From the way she treats him, with such caution and respect, It's obvious to Fang that the organization still isn't powerful enough to act arrogant, which means they're forced to treat skilled hunters well for now. So he makes a request: don't report my location or presence to the organization, at least not yet. He figures staying on good terms with Yen might be useful later on. Yen agrees, but warns him that completely hiding his existence won't be easy. After all, the organization has already noticed his frequent breakthroughs. He trains in open areas like mountains, and his energy spikes are way too loud to go unnoticed. So she offers a solution. She'll twist the truth. She'll tell the organization a story that's half true and half fiction to buy him more time. Fang agrees to the plan, but just as she turns to say something else, he's already vanished. Gone again, like always. Yen, acting sharp and composed, calls the organization right away. She tells them she still can't seem to catch Fang, that he's been avoiding her deliberately, even though she's been helping him conceal his aura for a while now. But the leader just tells her not to worry about Fang for the time being and to focus instead. A new monster phenomenon has just occurred in the city. Yen replies instantly that she'll never forget those creatures for as long as she lives. They're the most savage monsters she's ever seen up to this point. Some of them, after evolving, become cruel and intelligent, while others just go completely insane and crave human blood. The cause behind all of this? It's the polluted aura, the one that leaks from contaminated zones that randomly appear across the land. The insane ones are dangerous, sure, but it's the smart ones that are truly terrifying. These evolved monsters camouflage themselves into their environment, wait until they grow stronger, and then unleash chaos by creating a brand new high-level contaminated area from the inside. Meanwhile, in another part of the city, we see Fang making his way toward one of these very contaminated zones. And despite the government's repeated warnings to stay away, he's heading straight for it. The contaminated zone in question has appeared on top of Mount Yohan, a place usually known for tourism. Now though, the skies above the summit are engulfed in uncontrollable lightning and thunder, and the entire area is declared a danger zone. But of course, none of that matters to our protagonist. Fang is already climbing toward the mountaintop, aiming for the core of the storm. Because if there's one thing he knows for sure, the only way to grow stronger is to risk everything. And that means diving headfirst into contaminated zones, again and again and again. Right now, our protagonist's goal is to reach the center of the storm, because if he manages to absorb the lightning energy, he's certain he'll gain a new skill, a new aura, and his power will multiply drastically. And just as he gets close enough to the mountain, the system suddenly appears and alerts him that he has officially entered a contaminated zone. But unlike every previous encounter, the system this time can't even identify the level of the zone. It simply tells him, "Warning, danger, unknown level contamination." He keeps walking toward the mountain with steady steps, muttering to himself that even without the system, he would have taken the risk anyway, anything to grow stronger. We cut to the organization's strategic meeting room where everyone is discussing Mount Yohan, and just as Yen had mentioned earlier, this is exactly the phenomenon they were referring to. The leader, Lao, opens the meeting with a grim expression. This new contaminated zone on Mount Yohan, its danger level is extremely high. We've summoned Yen to explain everything she knows about it. Yen begins, "The lightning energy around the mountain is off the charts. There's no way an average person could even get close, let alone climb it. For now, the zone has been provisionally classified as Grade A, but things are changing fast. The intensity of the lightning is increasing by the minute. According to the reports Yen presents, the contamination level could rise to Grade S in less than 1 hour. And here's the real problem. There isn't a single hunter available who's capable of purifying the zone. Even those at the 3-star level are said to have a 0% survival rate." One of the hunters speaks up. "We should seal off Mount Yohan immediately. No one should be allowed to go near it. We'll need armed patrols on standby 24/7. Lao agrees. He gives the order to lock down the entire mountain, declaring that no one is to enter until the energy concentration drops again. But little do they know, someone's already there, and he's heading straight into the eye of the storm. Back to Fang, we find our protagonist already activating his solar aura while pushing deeper toward the center of the contamination zone. He mutters to himself, "If I deactivate this aura even for a second, I might die instantly." The reason he's heading straight for the center is simple. That's where the lightning energy is most concentrated, and he's confident that the higher the voltage, the faster he'll awaken the lightning aura. Fang reflects on how the return of aura to the world has flipped the food chain upside down. Humanity, once at the top, has fallen to the very bottom. Even creatures as harmless as rabbits, once evolved, can now threaten the lives of millions. But he doesn't just mean the weak and powerless. Even top martial artists will eventually become helpless against the terrifying monsters that are starting to emerge. He reminds himself that he already used some of his fusion points to infuse Tang's sword with the solar aura, which drastically boosted its defense and durability. That's in contrast to the flame sword technique, which had boosted its offensive power. And even though his current weapon is incredibly strong, Fong himself still lacks any real long-range attack techniques. That's exactly why he's so determined to awaken the lightning aura, so he can unlock some ranged abilities at last. But even if the aura he gains turns out to be a bit underwhelming, it still won't be a loss, because just by absorbing the lightning energy raging around him right now, his physical body alone would be strengthened to an absurd degree. Fang then takes a moment to reflect. In nearly every manhwa or martial arts story, lightning always represents the ultimate test, a brutal, elite-level trial that only the most talented warriors can survive. And maybe that's why right now we see him trapped in an incredibly tough situation as a bolt of lightning crashes straight into him, sending him into unimaginable agony. He screams out from the pain and tries to use his sword to ground the lightning energy, desperately attempting to lessen the force that's ripping through his body. Fang starts bleeding within seconds, gritting his teeth and muttering that he has to endure the pain, just like in the stories. From his past life, he already knows that the Thunder Aura is the hardest to obtain. Why? Because acquiring it means undergoing the same kind of trial that martial arts masters face during high-level breakthroughs. If he loses focus for even a moment, his body could collapse completely, leaving not a single trace behind. The power of the aura intensifies, and Fang begins to question himself. Was he really insane for trying to dominate such overwhelming energy? But suddenly, he recalls what the system told him earlier to look for the Thunder Core once he reached the mountain. He sharpens his focus, and then he sees something. Eyes widening, he bolts forward, shouting, "There it is, the core!" But of course, the lightning isn't going to let him just waltz in. It strikes at him again and again, trying to keep him back. Fang blocks it with his sword, forcing himself forward inch by inch, because he knows there is no other way to gain this power. "This isn't going to be easy," he mutters. "The energy in the air is so dense I can barely breathe." Despite the chaos around him, Fang becomes even more certain that the lightning is trying to kill him outright. But he clenches his jaw and growls, "I'm not giving up." And with those words, a massive surge of thunder energy explodes into the sky. Back in the city, several people glance up at the lightning dancing above the mountain. One old man narrows his eyes and says, "I can feel it. Someone up there is breaking through to a terrifying new level. It must be one of the true martial arts masters." Meanwhile, our protagonist receives a message from the system. Thunder Aura successfully acquired. Fong mutters to himself that this aura isn't just a devastating offensive power. It also holds an insane level of defense that could leave anyone stunned just by witnessing it. According to the old martial novels, this aura once existed in the world, but it vanished hundreds, maybe even thousands of years ago. After its disappearance, martial arts masters began relying on thunder energy to refine their strength instead of true aura. Suddenly, the system pings him, "Would you like to spend 5 fusion points to merge the Thunder Aura with your weapon?" Fang pauses. It's a tempting offer. Sure, it would make him even stronger, but it would also reduce the sword's purity. Besides, it's not a legendary weapon. If he keeps fusing too many auras into it, he could end up damaging it beyond repair. That's why instead he decides to merge the Thunder Aura with his own body. This way, he says, even if I drop my sword mid-battle, I'll still be strong. Once he confirms the fusion, he spends the rest of the day testing out his new abilities. The next morning, at the summit of Mount Yohan, members of the Aura Development Organization gather for an emergency investigation. Yen speaks first. She reports that the concentration of thunder energy dropped drastically, from its peak to almost zero in just 3 hours. Commander Han steps forward, suggesting that the sudden drop must have been caused by a hunter. He explains that the energy levels were still extremely high just last night. Hearing the word hunter, Yen immediately rushes over. She asks if he thinks the hunter is still alive. She tries to scan the area using her full spiritual power, but it's no use. The rain has already wiped out any traces. Han tells her that he's confident the hunter survived and that he must have left the mountain before 8 a.m. because that's exactly when the sealing procedure began. Why? which means the hunter was still up there on the mountain at that time. And since the thunder energy started gradually decreasing from 8 p.m. onward, Commander Han is convinced that the hunter must have possessed a thunder-type technique. He used the overwhelming lightning up there to rapidly increase his power level, but the amount of energy absorbed was beyond anything they've ever seen, and that's what makes Han nervous. If this hunter turns out to be an enemy instead of an ally, it could be catastrophic. Han makes up his mind. He can't allow this unknown hunter to continue growing stronger unchecked, so he immediately gives a direct order: track him down. Search every corner until he's found. And since they still don't even know his real name, they decide to assign him a code name: the Tyrant, Thunder Emperor.
Leader Lao then called out to Han, telling him to warn the soldiers not to attack that tyrant. They had to try and recruit him at any cost first. Lao believed the best approach was to send high-level hunters, since convincing them would be easier that way. And because this tyrant was actually the sun ruler they'd been searching for, Lao ordered Yen to share all the reports she had. Yen stepped closer, addressing Han. She told him that the man they were looking for had once purified a high-rank contaminated zone some time ago. She added that he had also defeated one of the evolved beasts and left traces of the sun aura behind, which was how he earned the title of Sun Ruler. Inside, Yen was terrified, praying she hadn't said anything wrong, because if she had, Fong would probably turn her into roast potatoes. Han was surprised when he heard the term Sun Aura, and thought to himself for a few moments. But since the discussion seemed like it would drag on, he decided to think more about it later. He thanked Yen for her effort and for helping old men like them. Han then approached Lao and suggested that they could set a trap for Fong by spreading fake flyers about contaminated zones. Meanwhile, our beloved Fong was busy adjusting his clothes. He decided to merge the sun aura into his coat since the weather was cold. Fong noted that he had felt a strange change ever since adding the thunder aura to his arm. Still, he thought it was natural. After all, his arm was meant to be stronger than his entire body, and its evolution was only to help it withstand the power of the aura. Although Fong felt like he was close to breaking through to the next level with the thunder aura, he found it strange that the aura was now calm and harmonious with his body, even though it had been violent moments earlier. He remembered the time he gained the sun aura and the pain he'd endured, only to find it perfectly in sync with him afterward. From this, he concluded that the system itself might be responsible for what was happening. With that in mind, he grew excited to test the Thunder Aura's power on the beasts. The system had informed him that using the Thunder Aura against beasts would deal 3 times more damage than usual. As always, his train of thought was interrupted by a phone notification. He had subscribed to every news forum so he could keep track of everything the moment it happened. This time, the alert was important, and Fong immediately guessed it came from the government, since they always sent warning messages to citizens whenever danger appeared. Fong thought to himself that what was considered a crisis or disaster for ordinary people was, for him, a golden opportunity to level up and grow stronger. The news reported an explosion at a chemical factory. While there were no human casualties, the pollution it caused was extremely severe. Online, people were discussing it non-stop, each with their own opinion. But the general divide was clear. Some saw it as a supernatural disaster, while others believed it was nothing unusual. As for Fong, he had an odd feeling, as if he remembered this incident from his past life. Thinking it over for a moment, he recalled the time he had almost died inside a certain building. Back then, he had been hiding behind one of the walls, trying to avoid being spotted by an evolved beast that was devouring humans right next to him. Fong clarified that he didn't mean that specific beast, which resembled a rat, but rather all evolved beasts in general, the kind that immediately began feeding on humans once they transformed. These creatures were far more dangerous than the evolved rabbit, and Fong knew they had to be eliminated before their evolution was fully complete. With the bonus damage provided by his Thunder Aura, he was confident that wiping them out would be much easier, especially before their transformation reached its final stage. On the roads leading to the factory, the swift and almost invisible footsteps of the hunters could be heard. These hunters were from the organization, and they received a call from headquarters. From it, they learned that specimen number 7, capable of blending into the darkness, had escaped from the factory. Headquarters warned the hunters about how dangerous this specimen was. It made a distinct popping sound whenever someone got close, and the worst part was, it fed on humans. The hunters weren't worried for themselves at all. Their real concern was for the residents of the nearby areas, especially since it was nighttime, and the power had gone out near the factory. The squad leader reassured headquarters that everything would be fine, because he and his team were currently moving at unmatched speed. Headquarters then sent over the file on Specimen No. 7, known as Candlelight. They continued with their updates, informing the hunters that the mission's priority had been raised to a full rank, meaning it was now classified as Rank B, and it had to be completed within 12 hours. Unfortunately, the most important thing for headquarters right now wasn't the lives of civilians, but the survival of the hunters themselves, who would be valuable assets in the future. The blonde-haired Gao commented that the 12-hour limit might not be ideal, but he understood that with so many disasters occurring, headquarters was under heavy pressure. His thoughts were interrupted when headquarters informed him that someone was on a mission near his location. That person was Yen, the leader of the Liang team, who had been tasked with training some new hunters. Gao suggested they contact Yen and let her know about their mission, since they would most likely need her experience, strength, and skill to take down the beast. But before headquarters could even contact her, Gao and his team ran into Yen themselves. Yen asked if this meant she had become famous now, then made it clear she wasn't ready to work overtime just for their sake. Gao explained that they were dealing with specimen Candlelight, the human-eating creature, but the way he spoke annoyed Yen, and she told him that if he wanted something done, he should do it himself. As Gao stood there in surprise, Yen began to walk away, saying that the destruction team wouldn't need their help anyway. One of her subordinates, standing to her left, asked what they would do if civilians really ended up dying. Quickly, Gao retracted his words and apologized to Yen for his tone. He told her they didn't care about their own lives, but they did need her help to save the civilians. Under the pressure of the situation, Yen agreed to join them. Moments later, they were all on the rooftop of a building, ready to pinpoint the creature's exact location thanks to Yen's tracking skill. Within seconds, Yen told them everything was clear and pointed directly toward the monster's position. Without wasting another moment, they all dashed toward it, afraid of arriving too late. Meanwhile, at the lair of the rat-like creature known as Candlelight, it only loved two things: darkness and human flesh. On the rooftop of a nearby building, the hunters arrived, and Gao ordered his team to begin the operation to eliminate it. Sensing their approach, the creature leapt from the window and tried to escape immediately. But Gao, refusing to let it get away, jumped in front of it without hesitation. Amid the tension, Gao ordered his team to take their positions. Once they were ready, they launched their coordinated assault on the monster from every direction. The monster wasn't focusing on any single target, and that gave one of the hunters the chance to leap down from above and land a powerful strike on it. The impact forced the creature to stagger backward, trying to create some distance between itself and the hunters. But the moment it had enough space, it unleashed an advanced technique. From Yan's words, they realized it was one of the high-intensity sonic wave attacks. Even though she tried to warn the hunters, the attack still hit them. Fortunately, none of them suffered any serious injuries. As for their leader Gao, he had already moved out of the attack range just in time. One of his men rushed over, asking if he was all right. Gao knew he wasn't completely fine, but he considered himself lucky. If he hadn't dodged when he did, he might have lost an arm. He also knew that with this kind of strength, if the creature stayed in the city any longer, it could cause massive civilian casualties in an instant. While Gao was distracted by his thoughts, the monster began to prepare another large-scale attack. But this time, it was aimed at a single point on the ground. Yen quickly warned everyone that the creature was digging a tunnel to escape underground. Her subordinate cautioned her not to get too close, as the mist it was producing was toxic and could corrode anything it touched, even human flesh. Unlike other teams, the Destruction Squad wore protective gear resistant to rust and corrosion, which allowed them to close in and form a combat formation around the monster. Gao instructed them that their priority was to gather as much information as possible about the evolved rat's abilities. Unfortunately, before they could act, the monster targeted one of Gao's weaker subordinates. With a single strike, it sent him flying back and immediately continued its escape attempt. Gao raised his voice at everyone, shouting for them to catch the monster immediately. Otherwise, their names would be all over the news, branded as failures. Up on the rooftop, Yan's subordinates noticed the pollution in the area getting worse. That prompted Yen to tell them to stay put while she went to assist the Destruction Squad. After a long chase, they finally tracked the monster to an abandoned factory. Yen asked them to let her check the concentration of aura in the area. When Gao saw the strange device on her wrist, he asked if it was the newly developed tool designed by the organization. Yen confirmed that it was, explaining that it measured the monster's energy level. She added that as long as the reading stayed below 50, the Destruction Squad could easily take it down. Unfortunately, just seconds later, the number on the device shot up to 80. Yen immediately concluded that there was more than one monster inside the factory, and together, Their combined strength was far beyond what they could handle. Suddenly, a strange noise came from behind them, and they realized someone had just locked the door. Gao shouted in fear, saying that Candlelight Rat must be an intelligent monster, one that had deliberately lured them here to ensure its victory. Yen quickly ordered everyone to attack the door at the same time. She was certain that if the monster saw them escaping, it would chase after them. But as she approached the door, a strange sensation washed over her, a killing intent so immense it was almost tangible. Yen realized with dread that the danger wasn't real, but the toxic gas had already seeped deep into her body, making resistance impossible. Moments later, Yen managed to regain her focus and tried calling out to her teammates. When there was no response, she realized she might be trapped in an illusion caused by the gas. She asked herself how she was supposed to get out of this mess. To make matters worse, she was certain the ruler of this place was a snake, one cunning enough to make a deal with the Candlelight Rat. The arrangement was clear. The rat would act as bait, luring hunters into the factory, while the snake's poisonous gas slowly drained their strength. It became obvious just how intelligent these evolved beasts had become. They had taken advantage of the similarity between the snake's venomous fumes and the rat's toxic breath, making it nearly impossible for anyone to tell the difference, until it was too late and their bodies began to weaken. Yen could feel it clearly now. The ki within her body felt as if it had completely evaporated, and without strong armor to shield her from the toxins, she knew she wouldn't survive. Looking up, she noticed a strange light filtering through the ceiling. She told herself this must be a sign that she was about to die. There could be no other explanation. Then, out of that light, a strange silhouette emerged. Yen closed her eyes, ready to accept her fate. But the figure turned out to be none other than Fong, who had been waiting for the perfect moment to make a dramatic entrance. Standing right next to the snake, he casually began to speak about it in a dismissive tone, saying he never expected all this chaos to be caused by one of those useless dark-type snakes. His words had the desired effect. The snake became enraged and lunged at him, its fangs bared, ready to devour him whole. Fong dodged the snake's first strike, only to be caught off guard when the rat appeared beside him. In that moment, he realized he would have to face two dark-type beasts at the same time. He quickly analyzed the situation while the rat tried to bite him, noting that intelligent monsters were starting to appear much earlier than expected, a worrying sign. It was clear now that the two creatures had been using the factory as their hunting ground. The rat would go out and lure in prey, while the snake poisoned them to prevent any resistance. The reason Fong felt no pain from the rat's bite became obvious within seconds. The creature had bitten the arm he had infused with lightning aura. In response, Fong unleashed a devastating lightning strike directly at the unfortunate rat, hitting it head-on and inflicting massive damage. Not stopping there, he channeled his sun aura into his sword and launched an attack on the snake. Calmly, he told the serpent that its death would not come easily, because he knew how much it despised fire due to its dark-type nature. Enraged, the snake struck again, determined not to give him any chance to harm it with the flaming sword in his hand. But Fong effortlessly avoided the attack and prepared a counterstrike. Still off balance from her failed assault, the snake couldn't defend herself in time. With incredible speed, Fong's blade pierced through her scales, and he continued slashing until her body was split clean in two, her venom spilling out and flooding the floor. Fong knew this wasn't the end for the snake, so he kept his guard up. Sure enough, she began regenerating, using her poison aura to heal herself. He wasn't surprised. In fact, he had anticipated something like this. Then, without warning, arcs of lightning started surging through her body. Calmly, Fong stated that he was well aware lightning aura was the greatest weakness of all dark-type beasts. While he admitted that the snake was far stronger than the rat she had been working with, he was still confident he could either kill her or cause severe damage with this aura alone. He then explained exactly what had happened. When he had slashed the snake earlier, he had also used his sword as a conductor to channel lightning from his arm directly into her body. From his perspective, the rat known as Candlelight was never a significant threat to humans. In its pre-evolution form, it could probably kill one, maybe two people at most. His train of thought was suddenly interrupted by a sharp pain in his shoulder. That's when he realized the snake had managed to poison him. Fong hadn't expected her to be this clever, but it seemed she had fully evolved, and that explained the attack. While he had taken precautions to protect himself during his assault, she must have waited until his blade made contact to inject her venom. Of course, all that poison was useless against him thanks to his sun aura. The intense pain he felt at first vanished the moment he channeled the aura into his wound. His rapid recovery came from the perfect combination of his two powers, lightning aura to purify his body, and sun aura to heal and restore his damaged cells. Fong admitted he was worried about the rest of the hunters, fearing they might already be dead. Their protective gear wouldn't stand a chance against venom this potent. From his words, it became clear the snake was a 3-star beast of the first rank. That meant no one but Fong could have taken down both her and her partner, Candlelight. He was certain that to reach such a level, the snake must have devoured a large number of humans, many of them likely hunters like himself. But none of that mattered anymore, because her end had come by his hand. Fong then glanced at the creature's lifeless body and admitted that his current strength still wasn't enough. He felt an urgent need to grow even stronger, strong enough that no one could ever defeat him. Moving closer to the fire, he seemed deep in thought, as if he had something in mind. But before he could act, he sensed an unfamiliar aura nearby. Someone else was still in the area. Of course, the person he was talking about was none other than the unfortunate Yen, who had lost consciousness some time ago. When Fong looked at her closely, he noticed her eyes were still shut. Confident as ever, he told her to open them. He was sure she was only pretending to be unconscious. At first, she had truly fainted, but no one could remain passed out while sitting in such a position. Yan's face turned red with embarrassment as she realized Fong was actually a fellow academy student. She quickly tried to explain that she had only woken up because of the smell of the venom, nothing more. Fong told her she was indeed strong, since all of her teammates had been knocked out by the poisonous gas, while she had managed to protect herself using a shield formed from her own aura. Yen admitted to herself that she had indeed kept a small portion of her aura to protect herself, but she still thought she might die regardless, and wasn't sure Fong would win. Fong noticed her eyes were still shut, and told her he knew she had already seen him. She could open her eyes if she wanted, but she must never tell anyone about his identity. Yen listened, opened her eyes to speak, but Fong was already turning to leave. He told her he didn't like pointless chatter and walked away. As he left, the reason for his earlier approach to the burning snake's body became clear. He had been trying to absorb the dark energy from it and considered himself lucky Yen hadn't caught him in the act. The attempt failed completely, so much so that even the system didn't respond to it, not even slightly. Back inside the abandoned factory, we heard Yan's thoughts again. She still didn't know how she hadn't gotten a clear look at Fong's face. She began waking her teammates, starting with their leader, Gao. The moment he woke up, Gao screamed loudly, warning about a possible ambush. Once he and the others calmed down, they went to inspect the snake's corpse, only to be shocked that it was completely burned and decomposed. With fear in his voice, Gao asked who could have done such a thing, and how any hunter could possibly possess enough power to burn the snake entirely. Yen pretended to be as clueless as they were, but suggested it was probably the target of her main mission, someone who possessed an unmatched fire aura. She added that she regretted not seeing him before he left, even though she was sure he had located her. In her mind, he hadn't intervened to save them. He had come only to kill the beast. Gao decided to focus on the main task first, dealing with the candlelight rat. He asked his teammates to help him clear the area and prepare the mission report. The problem was, the rat's body was nowhere to be found inside the building. While searching, Gao accidentally stepped on faint traces of lightning aura lingering on the floor. He quickly pulled his foot back, shocked, because Yen had just told him moments ago that the man who saved them possessed a fire aura. His surprise made perfect sense. Every person was supposed to have only one aura type. Yet here he was, staring at lightning aura left behind from the rat's body. Yan's reaction was even stronger. The lightning aura's purity was exceptionally high, while Gao assumed it must have been two different hunters who had saved them. But unlike him, Yen knew exactly what she had seen. She still couldn't believe that one person could possess two of the highest level auras. She had no intention of telling anyone, not just to protect Fong, but because this was something unheard of. People would accuse her of lying, and who could blame them? After all, that man was already registered under two titles, the Sun Sovereign, and more recently, the Thunder Emperor. We then learned that before entering the factory, Yen had left part of her team outside, instructing them to call for support from headquarters if they were delayed for too long inside. The two girls Yen had left outside nearly jumped for joy when they saw her return. They told her that if she had died, they wouldn't have accepted any other leader in her place. The support team that arrived, however, wasn't exactly what you'd expect for a rescue mission. They were equipped with the most advanced gear in the world, more like a squad of researchers than soldiers. Their objective was clear: gather information, not save lives. Within minutes, the researchers completed their scans. One of them contacted headquarters and delivered a shocking report, both monsters had been taken down by a single individual. Even more startling, his analysis was backed by highly precise readings, giving him 99% certainty in his conclusion. Gao admitted he no longer felt weak just because he'd been defeated. After all, those monsters were incredibly strong, and the one who beat them was on another level entirely. Yen, playing her part, also reported to headquarters. She informed them that her target had appeared inside the factory and defeated the monsters. She was forced to reveal that her target was, in fact, the Thunder Emperor himself. Surprisingly, her superior Lao accepted the news without argument. He even told her to pause her mission for now. In Lao's eyes, Feng could never be their enemy, not after not only taking down the creatures but also saving members of their aura development organization. He asked Yen not to tell Li Han about what had happened, but Yen shifted the topic, explaining that she had a theory about what really occurred back when the Thunder Emperor was seen on the mountain. Lao's excitement shot through the roof. He urged Yen to tell him her theory immediately. Yen explained that back on the mountain, she had sensed traces of a spiritual weapon. At first, she thought it was impossible, but now, after what she had seen, her opinion had completely changed. If someone like Feng could wield two auras, she reasoned, it wasn't far-fetched for him to also possess a spiritual weapon. But Lao shook his head. That couldn't be, because the method of crafting such weapons existed only within their own country, and in their possession alone. The only way Feng could have one would be if he bought it from another nation. Yen held her ground. She was certain of her analysis because his weapon wasn't ordinary. It carried the exact same solar aura as he did, and she had clearly felt its presence in the traces left on the mountain. Lao admitted her reasoning made sense. If the weapon shared his aura, then its energy waves and residual traces would perfectly match his own, making it nearly impossible for anyone to realize he was even using a weapon. Then he dropped a bombshell. Feng might have already reached the second tier. Yan's eyes widened in shock. There were only 2 people in the entire world at that level. If news spread of a third, it would cause an uproar, and the fact that he could wield more than one aura would drive everyone into a frenzy. Lao's tone grew tense. Having 2 auras alone was extraordinary, but if Feng also had a spiritual weapon on top of that, it would be terrifying. In that case, he would be utterly unique, a man without equal anywhere in the world. And the most astonishing part? This unmatched figure had appeared in their own nation, and was not using his power for evil. Back at Feng's home, he reminded himself that the phenomenon known as the awakening of the original aura was drawing near. In exactly 5 months, he had to be ready for the flood of monsters that would engulf the world. He knew most hunters had already begun their training by now, and he was certain they had found the best methods to prepare themselves. His thoughts drifted to those thieves who had once tried to drive him and his companions out of the volcano. Even the weakest hunters, he mused, would soon reach the first class of the first tier. Then he turned his attention to the organization's current interest in recruiting him. Could it be that the nation of Xiar itself was looking to bring in new people? If that was the case, it meant the government still respected independent hunters and feared them. The real issue, he noted, was that the government was still keeping everything under wraps. The general public knew nothing about the Aura Development Organization. Even when polluted zones appeared, they only received vague warning messages. In Feng's eyes, this wasn't the right time to join. The current approach had a major downside. The organization was being forced to track down capable hunters one by one. And if knowledge about the real state of the world were to spread, chaos would follow. Ordinary people wouldn't feel safe knowing that monsters and superhuman fighters were living right next to them.